Welcome back to the Company Show. We talk it is and we don't care how you feel, and we have another 2026 schedule preview to get to today. I am going to be making a video of all the SEC teams and some other teams from other conferences. So if there's a team in particular you want to see me make a video on, just leave it down in the comments below and I will get to it. But for today, we have none other than the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama finished the 2025 season going 11-4 overall, 10-2 in the regular season, and they went 1-1 in the playoffs. We all know what happened last season. They started off the season against FSU with an embarrassing, humiliating loss, quite frankly. Probably one of the worst losses Alabama has had in quite some time. Then they went on, they put together some really good wins. They unfortunately beat my Dogs in the regular season, heartbreaking loss. And for the middle part of the season last year, for about 4 to 5 game stretch, Alabama looked like legitimately one of the best top 5 teams in the country. They did kind of start to fizzle out towards the end. They did play the Dogs in the SEC championship where they did lose. I think that game was 28-7. So my Dogs got to get back. And then they played Oklahoma in the first round of the playoff where they won and then lost to Indiana in the second round. No fault there, no shame there. Indiana was the best team last year. They went on to go undefeated and obviously win the 2025 national championship. But what about this year? That's why we're here today. Well, they do return all of their core coaching staff. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer, head coach, he's back. He just signed an extension with the Tide, I believe, through 2020 or 2033, 7-year deal. So he's returning. Jury's still out on if Kalen DeBoer is going to be a great head coach for Alabama. I think he's a good head coach. Still waiting to see how he's going to do long term. I think he will do good for Alabama. If you're comparing him to Nick Saban, you're doing Kalen DeBoer a disservice and you're doing yourself a disservice. Cannot compare him to the GOAT, Nick Saban. Even as a Dog fan, no one was going to live up to the legacy that Nick Saban built. And they also bring back both their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator for the 2026 season. So one new face that we do have that's going to be new this year is the quarterback position. Obviously, Ty Simpson, he's off in the NFL. He got drafted. Congratulations to Ty Simpson. He is now in the league. But who's going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama this season? That's one of the biggest questions. I think right now it's between Keelan Russell and Austin Mack. Keelan Russell looked really good in the Alabama spring game. He went 4 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. He threw for 240 yards. Now, got to take that with a grain of salt. It is the spring game. Coming out of any spring game, there's positives and negatives to take away, but you don't want to overanalyze what happens in the spring game because it's a spring game. So we'll see. I think it's between those two. So that is one new thing for the Alabama that we just don't know what we're going to expect. I think it probably will be Keelan Russell, but could be Austin Mack. It could be one of their other quarterbacks that they have on the roster. Are they going to rotate? We have no idea. But that is one new thing for the Alabama this season. Also, they're returning a great wide receiver room. Ryan Williams, who now wants to be called Ryan Coleman Williams, changes his name, changing his jersey number, making a big deal. Diva, in my opinion. But, hey, it is what it is. He is really good. Ryan Williams is a talented, elite player. The issue with Ryan Williams is, can he be consistent game in and game out? When he's on his A game, and it always seems like it comes against Georgia, he is making highlight catch after highlight catch after highlight catch. You could literally make an ESPN top 10 catches just from some of his catches. But then he'll go about 3 games where he doesn't do anything. You go back and the game's over. You're like, wait, did Ryan Williams play today? So can he become more consistent? And another big question that I have for this Alabama football team coming into the 2026 season, what is their run game going to look like? Last season, the run game for Alabama was historically bad. I am 30 years old. It was one of the worst run games that I've seen from the Tide since I can remember. Maybe when I was a little kid and I just don't remember, but it was really bad. They were basically dead last in the SEC in total yards gained and average yards per game. So that's got to get better. If Alabama wants to get where they want to go, the run game has got to get better. If Alabama brings out the same run game that they had last season, they're going to start stacking up L's, without a doubt. So those are my two big questions for Alabama coming into the 2026 season. What kind of production are we going to get from quarterback? Who's going to be their quarterback is number one. And what kind of production are we going to get from him? And what is this run game going to be able to do? Are they going to be able to have a balanced offense and an effective run game? So those are my two biggest questions for Alabama coming into the 2026 season. Now, let's jump into their schedule. That's what we're all here for. They get things started off on September the 5th against ECU. Great first opponent to get things kicked off if you're Alabama. Starting a brand new quarterback, questions at the run game. This is probably one of if you're going to play anyone, you would probably pick this team for your first game with those. So ECU, name your score type game. I don't see Alabama having any issue in their first game for the 2026 season. Then they go on the road to play Kentucky. This is their first SEC road game, first SEC game. So again, this is probably the best team that if you had to pick a team to go on the road to play in the SEC for the first one, Kentucky's probably the best one to pick. So they're probably the worst team in the SEC. I don't think Alabama's going to have any issue there. I do think that Kentucky is a very physical team. I think they're one of the more underrated physical teams in the conference, but Kentucky's down bad. They're not in a good spot right now. Now, they do have a new head coach. I think Will Stein is his name. I believe this is his first head coaching job, at least at this level. So I do think there's going to be a renewed energy in that program, but they're not getting it done year one under him against the Tide. I think the Tide's going to roll easily. Then we have the great matchup against FSU. Alabama comes back home on September 19th to take on the Noles. This is going to be a great game to watch. And look, we all know what happened last year. We touched on it briefly in the beginning of this video, but an embarrassing loss Alabama took at the hands of the Noles last year. Just got out dominated in all phases of the game. They could not tackle. They could not run. They could not pass. They couldn't do anything. Alabama or FSU was just running all over them. I don't think that's the case this year. I think FSU is in a much worse spot now than they were last season. And I think Alabama's going to have still a bitter taste in their mouth from that game. Will be interesting to see, though, if Alabama gets down early in this game, how they're going to respond. But great game. After that, they then get in the meat of their SEC conference schedule. They stay at home to play South Carolina. Now, I think this is going to be the most underrated game of the week. And I think this is probably going to be one of the more tricky games for Alabama. If Alabama is not careful, they could very well lose this game. I'm serious. It's at home for the Tide, yes, but I think if Alabama's not careful, this could be a sneaky trap game for Alabama. Week after that, on October the 3rd, they go on the road to take on Mississippi State. Now, this could also be a trap game. You're like, why? Mississippi State is one of the worst SEC teams there is. Yes, but Alabama plays the Dogs the following week. So not only do I think they're going to have a tough game against South Carolina, they got to go on the road to play Mississippi State to come back home to play Dogs. Now, I will say Alabama's first two road games are Kentucky and Mississippi State. Literally the best two teams to get to go on the road for your first away in the SEC. But they do come back home on October 10th to take on the Dogs. Cannot wait for this game. This game's going to be the game of the week, prime time, night game there in Tuscaloosa. Look, it's hard for me to pick against my Dogs. It really is. I'm a homer, but I don't know if I can pick Georgia until I can see them consistently beat Alabama in the regular season. Yes, they beat them in the SEC championship last year, but can they do it in the regular season? It's going to be interesting to watch. Then they go on the road to play Tennessee the 3rd Saturday in October. Great matchup again. Talk about a tough slate of games coming up. They are at home against Georgia. The following week, they go on the road to play Tennessee. Then they're back home to play Texas A&M on the 24th, October 24th. They do then get their bye, but they have to go on the road on November the 7th to take on LSU. I cannot wait for that game. I think this is going to be another great game. I hated seeing this rivalry go away last season when the SEC shifted to a 9-conference game schedule and we all got three annual opponents. I was hoping that this was going to be one of Alabama's 3 rotation. I knew they were going to keep out Auburn. I knew they were going to keep Tennessee. I was hoping that they were also going to keep the LSU game. I know that's a tough slate, tough 3 opponents, but that Alabama-LSU game is one of the most exciting games for me, at least to watch every year. And also, this is Lane Kiffin's first year as a head coach at LSU. After leaving Ole Miss, all the drama surrounding him, now he's at LSU. This is definitely going to be a night game. Prime time there. I cannot wait for this game. Here is the key for Alabama's success, I think, is this 5-week schedule, or this 5-week right here. At home against UGA, on the road against Tennessee, at home against Texas A&M. You do have a bye, but then you go on the road to take on LSU. Can Alabama find a way to split those 4 games and go 2-2? I think if they can go 2-2 there, they're sitting at the end of the season looking really good. If they go worse than that, could get a little bit concerning. So can Alabama split those games and go 2-2? That's going to be that's a very tough stretch of games. I mean, that's Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, all back-to-back. That's tough. After LSU, November the 14th, they go on the road again. So they're on the road for 2 weeks in a row to take on Vandy. Look, Vandy had their little Cinderella story last year with Diego Pavia. I am so glad that he is gone. Thought he was a diva. Nothing but him. All eyes on him kind of attitude. Look, Vandy's going to fall back to what we typically see from them. I think that they were really good last year, but I don't think they keep it up. You're probably looking at a 6-6 Vandy team, maybe 7-5 if they can get some upsets, but I don't think Alabama's going to struggle. Then they're back home to take on UTC, another cupcake game. At this point, Alabama's probably going to play a lot of their backups. Again, another name-your-score type game. Then they finish off the regular season, as always, in the Iron Bowl against Auburn. It is a home game for Alabama this year. Again, that game's always fun, always exciting. Cannot wait for that game as well. So, where do I think Alabama's going to end up in the 2026 season? I think, look, moving to 9 games, it's going to be tough for any SEC team to go undefeated. I don't think we're going to see an SEC team go undefeated in the regular season for quite some time. I don't think Alabama does it this year. I don't even think my Dogs are going to do it this year. I think the ceiling for Alabama, 10-2. I think the absolute floor for Alabama, wheels completely fall off the bus. Everything's on fire. You're sitting at 7-5. I do not think they go 7-5. I don't know if they go 10-2. I think it's probably closer to 9-3, maybe 8-4. But I see 9-3 more than I see anything else. My thing is that stretch of that stretch of 5 weeks with those 4 teams. What are they going to be able to do there? If they can split those 4 games and go 10-2, or split those 4 games and go 2-2, I think they have a legitimate shot at being 10-2 at the regular season. I think I think Alabama loses the LSU game. I think they lose the Tennessee game. And as much as I want to take them to lose to the Dogs, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to find a way, even though Georgia's going to be the better team. They're probably going to be favored. You know, I have trauma from the Georgia-Alabama game. But I think you're probably looking at a 9-3. If I had to put money down right now, I'm going to go with Alabama is going to finish the 2026 season 9-3. I think they miss out on the SEC championship game. and I think that puts them in a good spot at 9-3, depending on where those victories are, a good chance to actually make the 2026 college football playoff. I think the team to watch out for that could upset Alabama is that South Carolina game that I touched on, but that's Alabama. Give me 9-3 for their record. Over and out.